So hang on a sec as we get everybody up and running. But this is our season 11 wrap live. So never get too many people on Instagram. So if you're one of the few that are tuning in there, we'll also be on YouTube and Facebook, where we get a lot more folks. So appreciate you all tuning in. And Elisa, are we good to go on YouTube and Facebook?
We are live and in color on Facebook and YouTube.
We are live and in color on Facebook and YouTube. Cool. Well, so yeah, we have wrapped season 11 of the show. Crazy to think. We're going to be taking questions from you guys coming up. So if you have them, send them in, whatever you want to talk about. Going to be hanging out here as we wrap season 11 of the show. We actually just taped our best of episode today that's going to be airing later on, where we talked about all the folks we featured this season. And I'm just running through the list. It's like crazy to think during COVID that we've had the opportunity to profile so many folks. Feel super fortunate to have had the ability to do this. But Canelo Alvarez in Mexico, Kyle Busch, billionaire Ray Dalio, Maya Gabeira, the big wave surfer in Portugal for our first overseas taping since COVID, mega producer Brian Grazer, Tom Hanks, Ryan Lochte, who we hope is going to qualify this week for the Olympics again, which would be super amazing considering his age. NBA star Kevin Love, Matthew McConaughey, of course, Dak Prescott to kick off this past season, Ryan Sheckler. We were at the White House with Annika Sorenstam, Lindsey Vonn. So yeah, it's been a heck of a season, and it's been thanks to you guys for continuing to give us the opportunity to do this. Huge thanks to our team for kind of banding together during COVID to allow us to keep traveling. And yeah, we are done taping season 11. We start taping season 12 next month. And I actually think, based on some of the early bookings we have, some of the access that we're starting to get now that some of the COVID precautions are being lifted, I think season 12 is going to be our best season yet, and that starts airing in September. We actually are in the process of hiring one more person to add to our team. So a couple final notes I wanted to mention before we get to your questions. And again, whatever you guys want to talk about, send it in, ask away. A couple things I wanted to mention. Big thanks also to, and I know, nobody likes hearing sponsors shout outs, but it's what keeps us having the chance to do this as well. Toyota, AT&T, Twix, Chase, GMC, so many folks, Pepsi, have been kind enough to support us. Where to watch? We always get messages if you watch the show on YouTube or Facebook. It seems like you generally watch there, and you don't know that the full episodes air on TV. If you're in the U.S., ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox stations around the country, on cable, on Bally's and NBC Sports Nets, internationally, ESPN, BT Sport, TSN, depending on your region, video screens and taxi cabs. We have the podcast where the long form interview runs. You can find all that information on grahambensinger.com. So check that out. Remember to subscribe, turn on notifications to keep up to date on our content that's coming out. Last thing I wanted to mention on YouTube, as we are racing towards a million subscribers. That is the goal. We hit 500,000 not too long ago. We're trying to get to 1 million. I hope we can do so by the end of next season. Once we get there, we're going to invite one of you guys out to an episode taping. So whatever you can do to help us get there is much appreciated. So without further ado, now that I've droned on long enough, I wanted to get to your questions. And Elisa, who do we have first?
So first up, we're going to go over to YouTube. Cameron Simpson says, as someone who wants to get into sports announcing, any advice that you have to give to me on what I need to know?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, if you want to, whether sports announcing or anything in broadcasting, is just put yourself in a situation where you get reps. Uh, I think so often people come out of school and they want to get the big internship at some big network to have it on their resume. Yet, all they're doing is, getting coffee or, transcribing. Uh, I would argue the platform that you have a role with matters less than the situation you put yourself in to get experience. So, if you want to do play by play, it doesn't matter if you're calling, you know, elementary school games as long as you're getting the reps. So I would just keep that in mind. Stature of the platform's less important than the experience to continue honing your craft.
Thomas Bealby has a great question, but he's in the UK, so he's going to go to sleep soon. I just wanted to ask, like, where all of our viewers are tuning in from before you get to Thomas's questions. Just throw it down there in the comments. Let us know where you're at. Thomas asks.
Yeah, well, it's always fun looking at our analytics digitally to see where people consume. Yeah, comment, let us know where you're watching from. That'd be great. What do you got, Thomas?
Thomas asks, what is your most inspiring business interview and why?
Uh, that's tough when just speaking to kind of entrepreneurial ambition because I mean a number of folks come to mind. Obviously, we spent better portion of a week in the Bahamas with Sir Richard Branson, which was somebody I loved and read both of his books and long tried to book for episodes. I've talked about that before here. Billionaire Ray Dalio, who we featured this season, who created the most successful hedge fund in the world, Bridgewater. Um, and big into deep ocean exploration, that kind of being the loose connection to sport. We did Falcons owner Arthur Blank. We spent a couple days with him. He co-founded Home Depot. I would say, and I'm sure I'm leaving many out. I mean, Brian Grazer's business, even though he's a prolific Hollywood producer, one that for whatever reason is somebody I really liked, even though it was a tough interview, was Bernie Ecclestone, the former chief of Formula One. He's in his early 90s now. Actually, just had another baby with his young wife. You got to give the man a lot of credit. But he's somebody who took Formula One from a really really small time operation and built it into this massive entity that it now is today. And that's through his just own hard work, persistence, you know, unrelenting ambition. And, all the power was kind of with him. He, admires, dictators, and he has a management style that certainly wouldn't be taught in business schools. But he figured out a way to make it work. And here's this guy who grew up poor and, is now buddies with leaders around the globe through the success he's had with Formula One. So Bernie Ecclestone, and if you ever get a chance to read a book on him, I highly recommend it. Fascinating guy.
That is one of my favorite interviews to watch. He's just really interesting to listen to. Over on Instagram, AOArt5, who is from KC, my old stomping grounds, asks, what's your favorite piece of sports art and why? People often comment on that photograph that's hanging behind you, but is that your favorite?
Oh, man, I don't know that I have a favorite piece of sports art. If I'm being honest, when we were putting our old office together, we moved to this office about a year ago because we needed more space. But when we were putting the old office together, I just went on to some online website that was having some sort of discount sale and ordered a bunch of crap to put on the walls. Having said that, I mean, that is obviously iconic photo that I love. Muhammad Ali who was actually the first kind of really big time star I had the opportunity to talk to. Very brief, but I was at the ESPY Awards as a high school kid, and Ali at that time was really no longer talking to anybody in the media because the Parkinson's had advanced, and it was difficult to understand him. It was difficult for him to move around. But, I was screaming from the red carpet, literally at the top of my lungs, Mr. Ali, Mr. Ali, Mr. Ali. And to my surprise, despite like blowing off everybody in the media because he just didn't do that stuff anymore, he slowly walked over and let me ask him a few questions. So, my Ali was kind of one of my dad's heroes, and so that meant a lot to me to have the chance to talk to him. And so when we were looking for art, that was obviously one I wanted for The Office. But I don't have any one specific like all-time favorite. I just go online and order stuff.
That just means you have a keen eye and good instincts. So over on YouTube, Reynard Fox says, what is the most difficult aspect of interviews?
Well, I guess a couple things. One of the most difficult aspects of the interviews we do, I think, is most commonly just getting the access because, generally we're pursuing A-list talent. Oftentimes they don't need the exposure that we bring, even if, we get a few million viewers on TV and, several million digitally. When you're talking about somebody like Tom Hanks, they just don't need that exposure. So, when you aren't asking for a 5 or 10 minute interview and you're asking for anywhere from a few hours to parts of a few days, depending on who it is, it's just a much longer booking process. And sometimes, as we've talked about before, it'll take years to book these people. In the case of Tom Hanks, it took 4 years. So that's difficult. But, it's kind of, I enjoy the almost sales element of that because absent doing the interviews, I feel like the majority of my job is sales, whether helping convince people to, sit down with us for tapings or signing on a big outlet to carry the show or developing a sponsor relationship. It's all a very relational business because, as I mentioned before, kind of conscious of our place in all of this, which is nobody needs our show. So yeah, it's kind of sales, and that's kind of the challenge, but then also a satisfying element of it to me. And then just, getting the person to open up is generally predicated on preparation. So if you appropriately prepare and then approach challenging subject matter with the right tonality, oftentimes that will give you the best chance to get the person to open up. But yeah, I think those are the two kind of consistently big challenges.
So I do want to remind everybody on Instagram and Facebook, we are taking your questions there as well on YouTube. If you want to go ahead and drop them in the comments, we'll get to you just as quick as we can. Here is a fast one for you, Graham.
And if I could interrupt you.
Yeah.
I've thrown this out there before, guys, and still really interested to get your thoughts. We're actively pursuing, we're exploring channel memberships on Facebook and YouTube. And if you have thoughts for, if we move forward with this, what you would like to see from channel memberships, let us know. It would not impact any of the existing content that we put out for free. We aren't going to put out any less. We just might put out different types of content or additional stuff as part of channel membership. So if that's of interest to you, we would welcome the feedback. You can comment here, or you can email me, graham@grahambensinger.com. Also, would love the guest suggestions. I always mention this. We love your suggestions. It helps a ton. We bring them up in our guest booking meetings whenever there are ones that we think could fit. So please continue to send those in. Yeah. Anyway, sorry for interrupting, Elisa.
That's okay. This is a quick one. Nam Rafni on YouTube asks, "What's your favorite color?"
I have no idea.
You don't know what your favorite color is?
I actually don't. Yeah.
He does
What's
wear a lot of colors in the office.
what's your favorite color, Elisa?
My favorite color is green.
All right. Well, good to know.
All right. Over on Facebook, Jason Kane asks, who would you most like to interview, but don't think you'll ever get a shot at? So who's your long shot? Call him out right now.
Queen Elizabeth. I think that'd be amazing. That's about as much of a long shot as it gets, but she'd be fascinating. I have always wanted to interview a sitting president. That is something we will actively work on. I think that'd be fascinating, especially to get real access to the person. But I think in terms of a huge long shot, it'd be Queen Elizabeth for sure.
I think that would be really fascinating. She has corgis. That could be fun too. So over on YouTube, Artur Delago says, "What was the most surprising answer you've ever received? And what was the question that you were the most uncomfortable asking?" And Artur is coming at us from Brazil.
Oh man. Well, all right. I'll put this one off on you, Elisa, since you have handled, PR for us for a while now, in addition to your counterpart Brian. How about the answer you found most surprising in terms of your promotion?
I will be honest with you, and I think this may seem obvious to some people, but it was Dak Prescott talking about his struggles during the pandemic. We went into that interview not necessarily knowing that he was going to talk about those things. We don't always know what people are going to talk about, but he was just so open and genuine. For someone in his position to kind of bear themselves like that, I thought it was great. It was really courageous of him.
Yeah, that's fair. I obviously knew we were going to be talking about, his brother's suicide, because you don't ask him about something like that he's going to be revealing publicly for the first time without giving them a heads up prior to the interview and making sure he's okay with it. As our Instagram falls down, Elisa, I might have you come out here to assist with this. Or wait, let's see if I can. There we go. That works. We can do it there. You might be looking up my nose, so if that's the case, I apologize. But we never would have. I never would have expected him to reveal that he was suffering from depression predating his brother's passing because of the pandemic. So you got to give somebody of that stature a lot of credit for being willing to share something like that, because it helps folks, especially when you're in the middle of COVID. The other one that I would say, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's Canelo Alvarez offering up unsolicited during our taping that his brother was kidnapped days before one of his fights, and him negotiating with those that kidnapped the brother in the days leading up to the fight. Didn't know about it. It'd never been out there anywhere. And he offered it up because he wanted to talk about it. So that's another one that comes to mind. And also on that front, before we get to your next question, and keep sending them in, whatever you guys want to talk about, I would have never expected our interview with Canelo to take off as much as it has. I mean, I think it has something like 30 million views digitally now. I mean, I knew he was a megastar. I knew he's the best boxer in the world. I don't think I realized he hadn't given an extensive interview predating ours. And so thank you guys for all the interest in Canelo. And based on some of the feedback that you guys have given us, it's kind of encouraged us to pursue more boxers, which hopefully we'll be able to bring you in upcoming season 12.
Speaking of Canelo, Mohit Gar on Facebook says, how was your Canelo interview so smooth? It didn't seem like there was any translation delay. That's a question we get a lot, is do you speak fluent Spanish? And some people might have a different view of that.
Well, I wish I spoke fluent Spanish. I probably should speak fluent Spanish because I took it from 7th grade till freshman or sophomore year of college. I, can barely put 2 words together, let alone understand anything. That was a challenge, and I give our producers a lot of credit for figuring this out because Canelo, English obviously is not his first language. He was willing to do some of our taping in English, which was the first time he had ever done that before. But the bulk of the interview he wanted to be in Spanish, and obviously, since I understand little, we had to figure that out because what I did not want to happen was for me to ask a question, him to respond, then a translator to translate it, and then me to ask the next question because that like doubles the amount of time that we would have to sit there for the interview, and I knew would just kind of bore both of us, but him especially. So I had an earpiece, and then I had a translator in real time as Canelo was talking in Spanish, telling me what he was saying in English. And I'd never done that before. It's how often you see like 60 Minutes and those sorts of programs when interviewing foreign world leaders handle it. And we gave it a shot, and it worked out pretty well. But that's a ton of credit to our team for figuring that one out.
It does look a little bit like movie magic. Speaking of the movies, Keegan Shepherd on Instagram says, if you were to have a sports biopic about your life, who would you want to play you?
I mean, I'd love to be in a position someday where that's actually a realistic possibility. I think if that was ever the case, whoever played me, I'd be thrilled with. But I am a long, long way away from ever having that be within the realm of possibility. But flattered that you would even throw that out there.
I think the IMDb line is going to be Graham Bensinger as himself. You're the only person that can be you. Over on Facebook, Yitzy Filler says, with all the highly successful people you've interviewed, what are some common themes that you see that are key to success?
I would say, and this could be debatable, but I would say, interestingly, less intellect, less about intellect, and more just work ethic, and an unrelenting self-belief. Even if they might not outwardly show it, you have to have a high degree of confidence in yourself to achieve the level of success that almost any of these folks achieve. So confidence and work ethic, I would say, are the 2 biggest ones that come to mind.
So Brad Lohman, I'm so sorry, man. Brad Lohman on Facebook says, have you ever misspoke during an interview question that made things really awkward?
I mean, as you can probably tell from this live, I can still barely put 2 words together. So yeah, I misspeak all the time. I often wonder how I've ever had the opportunity to even get this job because even more difficult for me just speaking fluently is putting a couple words together when coming up with a question. So but thankfully for me, I have question cards that I'll refer to occasionally and manage to get by. But actually one that does come to mind that is kind of funny to reflect back on. First season of the show, we were taping boxer Manny Pacquiao in the Philippines. It was the first of 2 trips we've taken over the years, the other, several years later. But this is first season of the show, have absolutely no money. The entire, just to give context, the entire budget we had for the season is less than we spend on an individual episode now, as context. So taking a trip to a place like the Philippines, if everything doesn't go right there, that could kind of, be lights off, out of business for us. Because in addition to me hosting the show, myself and our teams kind of created the small business behind the show that operates it. So we handle production, post-production, distribution, ad sales, etc. And so we get there, and despite having met with Pacquiao's representatives the weeks prior, and everybody knew we were coming, and it was agreed to, we get there only to realize that actually there must have been some miscommunication with his team and Pacquiao had no idea we were coming, didn't agree to any interview, and you just kind of see your life flashing before your eyes. And so on the last day we were there, I managed to get him to sit down for an hour interview. It was only because we literally set up outside of his bedroom door. So how we even got in there, I have no idea. But in order to get out of his bedroom to go to training camp, he literally had to walk through our set. So we got him, I think, for only that reason. But during the interview, which again was an hour, I remember almost falling asleep on multiple occasions because not only was I jet lagged, but I'm up all day there trying to figure out how to get access to him because everything had blown up, and then I'm up all night on the phone or trying to get a hold of people back in the States to connect with his team in the Philippines to make this happen. So we had done like a couple all-nighters going into this interview. So I can't even remember when the last time was that I got in sleep. And so I was pretty much senile during this interview. I've actually never gone back and watched clips from that. But yeah, I was completely out of it. So yeah, that's one that comes to mind.
Definitely hit it well. I don't think I noticed that you were jet lagged in the Pacquiao interview. So over on Instagram, HX Morones from Mexico, thank you for joining us from outside the States, asks what your favorite interview so far is.
No, I mean, I'll briefly mention the people that I've said before, and then mention a new one. Jim Brown and Sir Richard Branson are 2 of my all-time favorites. Branson took so many years to book him, and then I had a unique story for how I met him in North Africa that then led to a month later us doing this taping over a week in the Bahamas with him. We expand on that story in a YouTube clip if you care to get more background on that. And then Jim Brown, because he's one of the most socially significant athletes of the past century and has known everybody from Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X to Richard Pryor and Jack Nicholson and Hugh Hefner, etc. Among other reasons. But one we did this season that will probably go down as one of my all-time favorites is probably a less expected person, and that's mega producer Brian Grazer. I loved that episode, and he's a guy who similarly came from nothing. In fact, he faked being rich when he was in college by earning money through his own hard work to buy a Porsche, only to tell his peers that his parents had given it to him because he just wanted to fit in with the other rich kids, growing up in California. But came from nothing and becomes one of the most successful producers ever. And he's a guy who just doesn't take no for an answer when it comes to business, and has just always figured out a way. And it doesn't matter whether he's dealing with the biggest of celebrities or business titans. He just figures it out. And he has a lot of great stories. And kind of on a funny note, he often puts pictures of himself in the homes of these successful people that he visits. He'll put them in plain eyesight, but with other photos, so it'll take them sometimes years before they recognize it. And during our taping, I'm like, this is going to be fun. So we put a framed photo of myself in his house, and I've never gotten a message from him. And so I'm curious if he's seen it and just not said anything, or if he's still never found it.
I bet he found it and now it's one of his prized possessions.
Yeah, right.
I do just want to remind everybody again that we are taking your questions on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And I wanted to jump in on a question or kind of a comment from one of our viewers that says, long form interviews from you in a podcast form would get similar traction as Joe Rogan. I just want to let everybody to know those interviews do exist. Tell them about the podcast, Graham.
We have a podcast. We're in the process of getting it off the ground. So anywhere where you get your podcasts, you can get ours. Go subscribe, give us a rating, and comment. It will help us as we grow it. So that is the one place you can go to get the long form, uncut version of the interview. We try and kind of have a distinct value proposition for each platform. So YouTube and Facebook, we have clips. Taxis, we have clips. On television, broadcast or cable, it's the full episode where there are voiceovers, a lot of B-roll footage where we're kind of telling the best story. And then podcast is just the long form, uncut interview.
And it's pretty good. Jay over on YouTube asks, did you watch the French Open? Were you rooting for Novak? This kind of from that question, do you watch the sporting events that some of the people you've sat down with are? Is it hard not to have favorites if they go up against each other?
I actually watch very little when it comes to sports. I was a diehard sports fan when, I was growing up in junior high and high school, early part of college. But you'd probably sooner catch me watching an episode of the Kardashians than you would a full football or baseball game, as pathetic as you're going to say that is. I'm also a big Judge Judy fan, by the way, in case you wanted to know. I went to Canelo's boxing match, been to Wimbledon before, been to a number of Super Bowls, so had the opportunity to go to some cool events. I definitely will find myself rooting for the folks that we have featured because, it's just kind of, once you get to know them, it's and you have that personal connection, it makes a difference. So it was super cool to see Novak getting to 19, obviously one away from tying Rafa and Roger. I'm curious to see if he'll end up being the all-time record holder. He's certainly healthier and younger, generally. And generally healthier and younger. So I think if I was a betting man, I would bet on Novak. But, stranger things have happened. You would have thought by now Tiger would have blown away Jack Nicklaus's record. So, but Novak was another one of those tapings that we worked on for a long time to get access to him. And we spent a couple days in Serbia with him to fly from there to Tony Romo in Dallas, get back from Romo, and then 2 days later they postponed the NBA season, and all the dominoes kind of fell from there for the start of the pandemic. So been a crazy year and a half.
It really has. Real quick, Grizzly Breaks on YouTube says, Graham, I give you the Best Dressed Journalist Award. I wish I could show you guys some pictures of Graham when he gets dressed up for Zoom interviews. It's business on the front and then usually flip-flops on the feet.
I'm wearing flip-flops and shorts under my collared shirt, but you should look at some of my earlier season episode tapings. I couldn't even tie the, you know, knot for my tie or, yeah. Anyways, learned to dress a little better in later seasons, but I've had the help of some clothing partners as well. Hugo Boss, then Sean Barbados. So, yeah, it is one of kind of the fun elements of doing these tapings when you have a clothing partner that you can work with to, not really have to pick anything out yourself, and they'll just tell you what to wear and for what episode. That makes stuff a lot easier.
If only we all could have that. So Matthew Burkt on Facebook asks, in your opinion, what is the best sports town in the U.S.? So I'm going to take this question a little bit, Matthew, I'm sorry. Have you ever been to a town where you walk down the street with the person that you're interviewing and it's just like that town loves that person?
I mean, I would feel like most people will say the town they grew up if they're from a decent sports town. So I'm born and raised in St. Louis, still live here. That's where our office is, and we just travel for these episode tapings. And so, I used to run down to Busch Stadium where the Cardinals played, dating back to, elementary school. And so I think St. Louis has some of the best sports fans for sure. You'd be hard pressed to recall a time when St. Louis booed one of their own. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very biased when it comes to that. I think each city, has unique elements to their fan bases, but I'm biased when it comes to St. Louis. And I'm trying to think of, I mean, one of the places we went, the person had the biggest following was when we were in India for, arguably the best cricketer out there, Virat Kohli. And he's essentially a prisoner in his own home because he's so famous there and he's, adored by the entire nation. So that's one that comes to mind. And that was another interview we did that on YouTube got a ton of traction because he just has such a rabid fan base there.
I still have people talk to me about the Kohli interview. They can't believe that it actually happened. He's definitely very popular. Irvin Hatemi on Facebook kind of asks a serious question for you. He says, I understand that your business nearly failed at one point in time, and you mentioned that you had to open a line of credit with a bank to help you meet payroll. How did you overcome that and stay optimistic that you would succeed? Seems like a very difficult task mentally and emotionally.
Well, thanks for that question. I think because the alternative was finding another career. So, you make a decision at some point during that process, which is not fun. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. However, I would say it's the best thing that ever happened to me. You make a decision at some point in there that, if you believe in yourself and you truly think, you can make a go at this, then you need to do everything you can to try and make it a success. And I remember just telling myself, if I'm going to fail, at least I'm going to fail knowing I did everything I possibly could to make it a success. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what got me through it. Having said that, you're also first world problems, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, even when everything was super difficult for me, still, very fortunate just, being born in America and living in a place where there's the opportunity to even pursue these sorts of things. And I think through this show and having had the opportunity to have exposure to other parts of the world through episode tapings, that becomes abundantly clear. You want to do we have one more good one?
We actually have a couple more good ones, so it's gonna be hard for me to pick here. Let's do just
pick your next couple favorites.
Okay, so this is
we have to end these before people want me to be done with them, Elisa.
Oh, I don't think anyone ever wants you to be done with them. So this is one that I think is really interesting because I don't know that I even know the answer to this, Graham. So Carrie Terry on YouTube asks, how many questions do you come to the table with for a 2-hour interview? Do you navigate the question line as a conversation, or do you follow a preset line of questions? And Carrie also says, thanks, Graham. I enjoy your shows.
Great question, Carrie. I would say both, and it just kind of depends on the conversation, any potential time constraints, and how receptive the person is to what I'm asking. I probably have, I probably have anywhere from 7 to 12 of those index cards filled up with questions. I will always get through all of the index cards during the course of a conversation. I just might skip over a lot of questions or big chunks based on whatever turns the interview takes. But I always make a point of, hitting on kind of the key topics, and then you want to let it breathe as you kind of go along as well. Far from perfect when it comes to that. I think I have a ton of room for growth when it comes to interviewing, but I think if, we just wrapped season 11, if you go back 10, 11 years to season 1 of the show, I think the one aspect in which I've grown is just listening to what the person is saying. I think so often early on with some of the early episodes, I would be thinking about my next question rather than listening to what the person was saying. And I would miss lots of opportunities for follow-ups that would have taken the conversation in probably a more interesting direction. So yeah, have my questions and then you kind of pivot as needed.
Okay, I really tried hard to just pick one more favorite question, but I have 2. Lucas Zamorano on Facebook says, who are some of the guests you have scheduled for the future, or the top 3 that you'd love to interview in the upcoming season? Tell us what's gonna happen in season 12.
I'm gonna punt that one because I never like to jinx myself. I will say though that I think season 12 will be our best season yet. We have a number of really strong bookings so far, and a number of others that are close to getting confirmed. So we're going to be traveling all over again. We should be traveling to the other end of the planet too at some point next season. And I'm hopeful that we'll bring you another season that you guys enjoy, because you guys are the reason why we have the opportunity to do this. And I will say again, though, if there's somebody that you're interested in us featuring, please, comment on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram here, or send me an email, graham@grahambensinger.com.
Okay, last question, and I'm going to combine 2. So Gins on YouTube asks, what's the best advice you've ever been given? And Jojo, also on YouTube, says, in the type of work you do, which is more important, talent or hard work? So tell us a little bit about your work ethic and advice that you've taken to heart.
Uh, I mean, for me, hard work is more important than talent because I am, I would argue, probably the least talented person out there when it comes to on-air work. I think the only reason I've had the kind of continued opportunity to do this is because one, I created my own platform, meaning, it wasn't, some executive hiring for a role, because if that was the case, the executive would have found far more, qualified and capable people than me. But then two, we put probably 100 hours of research into each interview preceding the sit down. And when you prepare like that, it makes the subject more engaged, more willing to give better access, and then that creates for a better finished product that then, helps in allowing one to kind of continue their pursuit. So yeah, I would argue far and away, hard work is kind of the only thing I've going for me. But then over time, as you get more reps, you just continue to develop as a talent. So yeah, that's how I would answer that. And I think most anybody that we've profiled for an episode of the show would uh, say the same thing. And the other thing I'd add to that is passion. If I think if you want to have a ton of success, there has to, and I am far from achieving that, but I think the consistent theme among lots of folks that we profile is just the passion for whatever it is that they're doing. Because that's going to encourage you when the time gets tough to lean in and work even harder. Thank you guys for tuning into this. We've gotten a bunch of positive feedback from the past ones we've done on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and so that's kind of encouraged us to do more of these. We'll continue doing them as long as you guys want us to. A couple reminders. Subscribe, turn on notifications so you can keep in the loop when we have new content. If you have thoughts on channel memberships for YouTube and Facebook, please send the thoughts my way, graham@grahambensinger.com. Email me your guest suggestions. We have wrapped year 11, season 11 of the show. A huge thanks to all of our team for making this happen. To be able to keep taping episodes during COVID is a testament to them. And could not be more grateful for our team. We start taping season 12 next month. It starts airing in September. I think you guys will like what we have in store for you, and appreciate all of the support. It means a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Oh, wait, Graham, real quick. Remind people what happens when we get to 1 million subscribers.
And when we get to 1 million subscribers, we will take one of you guys on an upcoming shoot if you think you can tolerate me and the team for a taping. So just hit 500,000, and if we can get to 1 million, we'll be bringing one of you guys out on a shoot. And my hope is by the end of next season, we can get there. So fingers crossed.